Well, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in from around the world today for a really exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. Neither us nor Parks know quite why, but we have 5,300 kids joining today from 23 U.S. states, 6 provinces and territories in Canada, and like 7 countries on 5 continents. So a huge welcome in wherever you are joining from today. It is such a thrill to have you. If you are new to Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, as so many of you are, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world through over 40 live, free, interactive monthly broadcasts. Now, everything we do goes to our YouTube channel, so you can check out like 4,000 past programs there. You can head to our site and check out 40 more we've got in the month to come. There is so much to explore and discover. And you're catching us on a really exciting day for 2 big reasons. Number one, this is February. So February, for our entire history as an organization, has been the month we kick out all the dudes and spend the entire month solely showcasing and celebrating the most amazing women in science, exploration, and education on planet Earth. We've got paleontologists, Egyptologists, Arctic botanists, all sorts of amazing folks, and I'm really excited of all days that you're joining us today because we are back with our friends at Parks Canada. So for years now, we have joined with the amazing mountain parks in Alberta and British Columbia to do the Peak Discovery series. Now, these places are not just some of the most beautiful places in Canada, but the entire world. I've been so lucky to visit some of them in person. I hope many of you have as well. And if you don't have the chance to see them in person, I'm so glad you're joining us for this special series showcasing these really neat places. Now, before I introduce our topic du jour, we are going to have a Kahoot today. So between our talk and our Q&A, if you want to play along with a little 4-question quiz to test your understanding and have some fun, you can pull up that game pin on a separate tab and do just that. Now, with all that said, I'm so excited to welcome in Lori from Banff National Park. Lori is one of the most featured educators we've ever had on the program, and it's because she's one of the most enthusiastic and best people in the world. And today, she is going to talk to us about habitat heroes, some of the invasive species that are threatening some of these special ecosystems in Banff and beyond, what we're doing to stop it, and how you can help whenever you go and visit amazing parks. So, without further ado, I'm going to zip it. I'm going to turn you over to Lori. Lori, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome back to the broadcast.
Hi, Jesse. It's great to be back. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, wherever you are in the world. My name is Lori, and I work for Parks Canada in beautiful Banff National Park. Banff is home to remarkable and unique creatures, but some of these creatures are having a hard time living in Banff because of invasive species. Today, we're going to explore why invasive species are such a big problem and how we can become habitat heroes and help protect this beautiful park. Now, let's first take a moment to acknowledge that Banff National Park is within the present-day territory of the Treaty 6, 7, and 8 First Nations, as well as the Métis homeland. The lands and waters of Banff have been used for millennia by Indigenous peoples for sustenance, ceremony, trade, and travel. We thank them for their continuous stewardship and for sharing the land with us. Now, what is Parks Canada all about? Well, it is the job of our Parks Canada team to look after Canada's natural and cultural heritage. So let me know in the chat if you have ever visited Banff National Park or even Canada, and maybe you've seen one of our national historic sites or a national marine conservation area. We protect all kinds of things. These are all places that Parks Canada takes care of. And we protect animals, plants, landscapes, and historic sites now and for future generations. And one of the principles that guides our work at Parks Canada is called ecological integrity. That basically means an ecosystem that is healthy and balanced. This includes both living and non-living parts of the ecosystem and all of the processes that they need. So what I mean by that is in the Rocky Mountains, some of the non-living parts of the ecosystem are things like rocks, glaciers, wind, water, and sunshine. And we can see the living parts of the ecosystem all around, things like plants, animals, fungi, and even bacteria that we can't see. And tying all of this together are the processes of life: birth, growth, reproduction, death, and decay, as well as non-biological processes like seasons, avalanches, fires, and floods. And when everything is in place and functioning in balance, we call that ecological integrity. Striving for this balance guides every decision that we make at Parks Canada. Now, maybe you've been here, maybe you haven't, maybe you've dreamed of coming here, but what is something that makes Banff a special place to you? Throw some ideas in the chat if you have a moment. In Banff, there are many beautiful places to visit and many animals and plants that are found in these mountains. Banff National Park is home to 53 species of mammals, over 311 species of birds, 844 species of plants, and 18 fish species. This incredible diversity of wildlife reflects the wide range of habitats in the park. They're caused by variations in elevation, climate, and plant communities. But sometimes alien species will invade the park and harm the plants and animals that make Banff so special. So what do you think when you hear of the term aliens? Aliens from outer space! Well, at least outside of the space that we call Banff National Park. There are some plants and animals that are living in Banff these days that are not originally from Banff. We call these non-native species. And when they cause problems in the ecosystem, then we call them invasive species. They can be found on water and on land. When invasive species are introduced to the environment, it can cause problems for the native species by eating their food, taking their homes, or spreading illnesses. Often, people are the ones responsible for bringing them here. Let's meet one of these alien invasive species that you have probably seen before. Goldfish. Let me know in the chat if you have had a pet goldfish before. These cute little fishes are a great pet to have. Jesse, yeah, have you had a goldfish?
I've had many goldfish, like dozens of goldfish in my life, and all the kids are raising their hands in the chat on the StreamYard as well. So goldfish galore.
Exactly. They're a cute little pet. They're great to have at home, but they could be harmful if they're released into an outdoor body of water. They can reproduce really quickly, and they can make thousands of tiny baby goldfish. And when there's this many goldfish, they take up a lot of space and they eat all the food that the native fish need to survive. And they can grow to be huge. Look at this guy. Goldfish are not originally from Canada. They're considered an invasive species in Alberta. And when they're added to new lakes or rivers, they uproot plants and they destroy the habitat for the native species that do belong there. You can be a habitat hero by never releasing any pet fish into a wild water body. In Banff, we want to protect aquatic ecosystems because they're an important part of many animals' lives. Aquatic ecosystem in Banff are home to living things like bugs, plants, algae, and of course, fish. Rivers like the Bow River, the Red Deer, the Clearwater, and the North Saskatchewan all have their start in these mountains. Water from Banff provides a source of life in many places for many species. In the national park, we protect two endangered species, the bull trout and the West Slope cutthroat trout. These two types of fish are listed as species at risk because they face some big threats in their aquatic ecosystem. One of these threats is called whirling disease. Now let's first take a look at a normal fish. This is a healthy West Slope cutthroat trout. And we can see he's swimming really nicely, really normally. Beautiful. Now let's take a look at another young trout that has been infected with whirling disease. You see there, it can't swim properly. So what's going on here? Well, whirling disease is a tiny, tiny parasite that causes sickness in fish. This parasite does not belong here. It was brought here, it causes damage, so we call it an aquatic invasive species. This image of a fish that were infected by whirling disease. So can you see what looks wrong on these fish? Is there anything that looks different from a normal healthy fish that we just saw?
Absolutely.
What do you think?
That curved back, and some people are already mentioning that in the chat. So it certainly looks a little odd and peculiar. It might contribute to that weird swimming.
Exactly. That's why we call it whirling disease, because the disease affects their nervous system and their muscular and skeletal systems. So let's take a look here. That tail is a really dark color. It's bent. That's right. The fish is forced to swim in a circle. And this makes it hard for them to swim properly and find food. So that can make a lot of young fish die and the population can crash. These are the most obvious visual signs of whirling disease. Now, in 2016, whirling disease was discovered in Johnson Lake in Banff National Park. Luckily, it's not harmful to humans or other kinds of animals, but the lake still had to be closed so that infected fish could be removed. But invasive species like whirling disease are extremely difficult to remove. In one part of its life cycle, it becomes a tiny spore that can live in the mud for years. We can't see them or scrub them away. Whirling disease can spread quickly and easily, like our next example, zebra mussels. They are another type of aquatic invasive species. So just like the whirling disease parasite, zebra mussels are not native to Canada and they can cause damage to our natural ecosystem. And looking at these images of zebra mussels, what kind of things do you notice about them? What do they look like? Well, just like the name, you see zebra mussels have stripes on the shell, right? That's okay. Jesse, chime in.
Oh, I was just
Come
going to
on
say
down.
our chat's been really active. So if students ever
Yeah,
want to chime in with anything when Lori mentions anything, please feel free to. We'd love to hear from you guys. But you mentioned the stripes already. We've
yeah.
got
What
there's a
else do you
lot
see?
of them together. They're all sort of hanging out together at like a club. So a
Yeah,
gang of zebra mussels, stripy, and then pretty small. We got our centimeter thing there. They look like they live in a cluster. Yes, fantastic, everybody. You guys are great.
yeah. Yeah, good observations. They're about the size of your pinky fingernail. So just take a look. They're pretty small and they can be kind of triangle shaped, and the edge of the shell is super sharp. So you definitely don't want to step on a colony of zebra mussels with your bare feet. All right, so good looking at the clues there. There we go. Now here we can see a lot of mussels attached to this boat propeller and this buoy. Now, why would this be a big problem? Well, zebra mussels can reproduce like crazy. Yes, they can make over 1 million eggs a year, believe it or not, and they can stick to any solid surface. They can damage boats or anything that they stick to, and it can take a lot of time and money to get rid of them. So most of the time, it's actually impossible to completely remove the mussels once they have infected a water body. Each mussel releases 1 million eggs a year. Imagine, right? They have no natural predators, and their population explodes whenever they reach a new habitat. And when they stick to boats, they can easily travel to places to find food and lay more eggs to make more mussels, which can cause more problems for the local environment. Although they're an aquatic species, these mussels can survive outside of water for up to 30 days. So if they stick to your boat, they'll still be alive when you put it in the water in the next place in 2 weeks or even a month. That means there's a higher chance of the mussels finding more places to stick to and spread to more bodies of water. Zebra mussels and their cousins quagga mussels cause huge problems in the lakes that they invade. And some of these problems include stealing all the nutrients in the water. They're filter feeders, right? So they pull all the good stuff out of the water, and this means that other plants and animals that live there won't have enough food. Mussels stick to so many places that it makes it hard for fish to lay their eggs, and it becomes harder for baby eggs to survive. Their sharp shells wash up on the shore and can cut your feet. And they also like to stick to other mussels, which means that they can kill native mussel species. And they're difficult to remove. They cause a lot of damage to boats or pipes, and it takes tons of money to get them all removed. So just like other invasive species, it's difficult to remove and eliminate them. Now, water activity equipment is the most common thing that can spread invasive species to new lakes and rivers. If it was used in an infected body of water, the zebra and quagga mussels could stick to it just like in the pictures we saw before. Even the tiny parasite that causes whirling disease can be carried from one place to another within the puddles that stay on boats or gear, even on little floaties like this beautiful little flamingo here. So if people don't clean their equipment, invasive species could catch a free ride to the next lake or river it goes into. In Banff, Parks Canada monitors the lakes and rivers by testing the waters. But the most effective way to protect Banff's lakes and rivers from any type of invasive species is prevention. Invasive species do not belong in Banff, so they should not be brought here in the first place. Now, what do you think are some things that we could do to prevent aquatic invasive species? Do we have some ideas coming into the chat, Jesse?
Let's see. We've got so many questions and interest in the chat.
These are coming.
Toronto and Fort McLeod.
We're having so
all
much
over the
tech
place.
fun here this morning.
Yeah, Marietta, Georgia.
All right, I'm going to go ahead, but I think these might be some of the ideas. We can clean, drain, and dry. So clean all of the dirt, sand, plants, and things like bugs from your boat and gear after you're done using them in the water. You can drain water from coolers, buckets, or places where there might be water before you leave the lake. Remember, water can carry tiny bugs or parasites that you can't see with your eyes. So it's important to get rid of all that water. And dry your boat and gear to make sure there's no more water at all. Following these steps plays a very important part in preventing any alien invasive species from harming the lakes and rivers in Banff and everywhere in the world, wherever people are bringing boats from one place to another. And that's how you can be a habitat hero. Now, what about on land? Habitat heroes need to be out on the lookout for invasive plants. These plants can damage the ecosystem by taking all the nutrients from the soil. They can impact the growth of other plants, including trees, and trees are really important to provide shelter for wildlife around here. On this slide, there are some of the beautiful native wildflowers that we want to protect in Banff, but among them are 2 invasive plant species. Can you guess which 2 flowers are actually invasive species? Do we have? Jesse's looking. What do you think?
I don't know. I honestly don't know, and I don't like in my mind when I think about Alberta, I would say the bottom left looks like he might not belong, and maybe the bottom right, but I'm literally just coming out of that out of thin air. Let's see if anyone else has any thoughts. No, nothing coming in quite yet. We're all confused. Lori, tell us more.
It's a tricky one. That's right. So we have here these beautiful species: yellow columbine, Canada thistle, prairie crocus, paintbrush, tall buttercup, and the lady slipper. And the answer is the 2 in the middle, the Canada thistle and the tall buttercup. Invasive species are hidden all among us, so it's important to know how to prevent it from spreading to more places. So let's look at the Canada thistle first. This is pretty common in Banff. And what are some of the things we notice about this plant? Well, they have prickly flower heads and leaves. The flower is kind of a bottle shape, and it's very tall. It can grow about 1 meter high. So keep these in mind, and you'll be able to spot the Canada thistle when you go outside around here. Now, you can easily find them almost anywhere because the roots grow quickly and they can start growing more plants just coming right up from the roots. They love to grow in dry areas, which also makes Alberta a place where they can easily grow. And since this plant is so strong and can grow so well on its own, it can cause lots of other problems for native plants. The thistle sucks up nutrients and doesn't leave any for other plants. And if other plants can't grow, it will affect the food source for animals like deer. It also affects the plants that humans like to eat. For example, canola, barley, and wheat. Now, it's important to mention that there are species of native and good thistles in Banff. Native thistles provide pollen for some insects and seeds for birds. But we want to get rid of the Canada thistle because it's an invasive. The tall buttercup is our other invasive plant common to find in Banff. It can grow about 90 centimeters tall. That's about 3 feet. And unlike the thistle, this wildflower spreads through producing seeds. One plant can produce up to 250 seeds. So we're finding something in common here with some of our invasives. They're really good at reproducing, right? The seeds can stick into the animal's fur, our clothing, or fall into rivers to easily spread to other places. Now, this invasive plant causes even more trouble because it's a little bit toxic. Touching one or two flowers won't hurt you, but if you have too much contact, it can cause your skin to get itchy. And for animals, especially cows, if they eat it, it can affect the amount of milk that they can produce. It changes the color of milk or even the taste. Ew. Most of the time, these animals know that they shouldn't eat this plant, but this also means that when they leave it alone, there's nothing getting rid of this invasive species. There are many ways that Parks Canada tries to control the growth and get rid of both of these invasive plants. We can dig them out of the ground or spray chemicals on them to kill them. But since there's so many all over the place, it's difficult to kill all of the invaders without affecting other plants and the environment. So prevention is the key. Preventing invasive plants from coming into the park is the best way to stop these plants from spreading to more places. And our three messages here are to remove the plant material and mud from your shoes, bags, equipment, pets, and vehicles. Yes, even rovers' feet can pick up those seeds. When you go hiking, there might be seeds and dirt that can get stuck to your shoes. When you brush off your boots, that can help prevent carrying plant seeds into another area. You can clean all the things that you're bringing with you on a hike, even before you go there, and clean them after you are done your hike. And staying on designated trails that are made for you to hike on helps us to limit how much we disturb the natural environment, and it decreases the risk of carrying seeds of invasive plants to other places. And that is how you can be a habitat hero. Now, we protect and preserve some rare tree species in Banff. The one that you see here is called white bark pine. They grow high up in the mountains near the tree line. They are special because they help lots of animals by giving them food and homes. The white bark pine makes seeds that bears, squirrels, and birds love to eat because they're full of protein and fat. So if you've ever tasted pine nuts from the grocery store, these are just as rich and delicious. And white bark pine trees help hold the ground steady and hold on to snow, which helps other plants get water and prevents flooding in the spring. However, these trees are in danger because of a tiny insect called the mountain pine beetle. Mountain pine beetle is a naturally occurring insect of the Rocky Mountain ecosystem, so it is native to these pine forests and has been around for a long, long time. So it is a native species, but it has become an invasive, harmful pest for the ecosystem because they're out of balance. They're overpopulated and they're killing lots of trees. There's some images here of trees that were affected by the beetle. Looking at these pictures, is there something that we notice about the trees? Jess, do we see anything strange going on here?
Absolutely. And I will say this sort of thing happened in my province of Newfoundland as well, where a lot of them turned brown. You'd look at a forest and half of it was green and half of it looked like it was a bunch of dying trees. And it's quite distressing to see something like that on a forest scale. So very odd. Tell us a little more.
Yeah, so this is what we can see around here, the needles of entire crowns of trees turning red. That means red tree is a dead tree. And on the right side there, you can see bubbles of sap on that tree trunk. That's where the beetles have dug into the bark, and the tree is really trying to push them out by using their sap. So if we see those things that look like blobs of chewing gum bubbling up on the side of a pine tree, that is often the beetle infestation that we can see hints of it. So there we go, those red trees and that blobby sap. Now, how do mountain pine beetles kill trees? Trees are really big, and pine beetles are really, really small. They're about the size of a grain of rice. But when the beetles move into the tree, it's not just one beetle. It can be 1,000. So they use their sharp little mouths to dig tunnels under the bark, and they make spaces where they lay their eggs. And after hatching, the baby beetles tunnel sideways inside the tree. Ultimately, that cuts off the flow of sap from the bottom to the top of the tree and back again. That is the tree's food delivery system. So it can't get the nutrients it needs, and that tree will die. So originally, the mountain pine beetle's role in nature was to help renew the forest by removing larger trees so that more sunlight can reach the space below it. This helps other plants grow and recycles nutrients in the forest. However, with decades of controlling fires, eliminating fire from this landscape, trees have grown a lot older and bigger, making them too close together, and this makes it easier for the beetles to spread to more trees. Another reason why there are too many beetles is because of climate change. When it gets super cold in the winter, especially early winter, it can kill off quite a lot of the beetles. But because of climate change, our winters now are not as cold, and it's not killing the beetles off anymore. Fire is the main tool that Parks Canada uses to control the beetles. Some parts of the forest are burned on purpose to remove the beetles' habitat and recycle nutrients. Crews may remove infected trees by either burning them or cutting them down, and this needs to be done before the adult beetles fly away from where they were born to find new trees. The cut trees are then destroyed by peeling off the bark. So mountain pine beetles can still live in firewood long after it has been cut. One way we can help prevent the spread of these bugs to more areas is by not transporting firewood. If people bring firewood from another area into Banff National Park, they might accidentally bring more beetles with them. So in order to prevent the beetle from spreading in firewood, Parks Canada asks visitors to follow the buy local, burn local idea, which means, I don't know why my slides are not going ahead. Let's try that. Nope. I'm not sure what's happening.
Now we've got the Habitat Heroes exciting trumpet of excitement.
But it's the slide's not advancing, and I don't know why, Jesse.
Well, I will say, Lori, for our audience, before this broadcast, the whole system at Parks shut down. So Lori made it in, and we've made it through 28 minutes of glory. And if it has to fail, well, something should go wrong in every video call. Otherwise, it's no fun. But
yeah, well,
best of luck with it for our final few slides, and then we'll do our Kahoot and questions anyway.
Awesome. Okay, so here we go. So our buy local, burn local, buy firewood locally. Grocery stores and gas stations in Banff sell it, so you don't need to bring your own firewood from elsewhere. Also, leave behind any leftover firewood. If you're using it in a campsite, you can leave it there for any other visitor to use. Now, even though the mountain pine beetle is native to the Rocky Mountain area, we don't want it to get out of control and kill too many trees. So buy local, burn local, and be a habitat hero. Now, this is very strange. I've never had this absolutely freeze on me before.
This is half the fun. I think, we're vaguely back. Anyway, I'm sorry it's giving you trouble, but is there a final message you want to share in lieu of slides changing for you? Or it looks like you might almost have it back up.
Let's find out if I can get that going. Ha-ha.
Ha-ha. Okay. Almost.
Let's do this. Okay.
Kids at home, I find smacking computers as emotionally satisfying, even if it doesn't technically work. But look,
there we go. Yes. We can fix it. So to protect all of the special things about Banff National Park, we need to work together to prevent invasive species. We want to preserve the natural environment while we enjoy this place. So let's review some of the most important things that we have learned that we can do to prevent invasive species. So we can clean, drain, and dry all of our equipment. Then for preventing invasive plants, you can play, clean, go. So remove your plant material, clean your gear, and stay on the trails that were designated for hiking. And for firewood, we can buy local and burn local. And don't transport any firewood, just leave it in the park. By remembering these guidelines and working together to prevent invasive species, we can all become habitat heroes. So thank you for joining me today to learn about how you can do your part in preserving the homes to so many special species that live in Banff National Park.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lori. As always, we worked through tech stuff. We covered a lot of ground. We talked about so much. And now, before we dive in with our Q&A, with our live classes on StreamYard, with all our YouTube classes that have already shared a bevy of questions, we are going to do our Kahoot together. So if you're new to Kahoot, the faster you answer, the more points you get. And as anyone who's been with me before, you'll know what you win is Lori and I's everlasting respect. So with that in mind, because that's pretty cool, we are going to dive in and get underway. Lori, if you want to give us hints for any of these in our final few seconds, you can. And then we're going to head to our 2 Davis class for our first live question in just a minute. So stay tuned for that. Let's dive in and start with question number 1. Now, I've never had this in a Kahoot on the Peak Discovery series because we usually have a lot of people from this province here, but we have so many newbies today from all over the United States especially that I wanted to ask. What province is Banff in? Who was paying attention at the beginning? Is it in Ontario, Alberta, British Columbia, or Quebec? I will say, too, this picture is of Moraine Lake, which is probably the most iconic of all Canadian images. It is actually that blue. You can actually paddle on it. It's one of the best experiences of my entire life. So I encourage you all to go there and do. All right. Alberta.
Amazing.
All our Albertans got this.
All our local kids are they're on it. Excellent.
They're on it. Happy Camel has our lead. That would be a very invasive species in Banff. No happy camel should come there. All right.
Definitely no camels here.
This is a tricky one. A species introduced to a new area it shouldn't be always takes over. Every time a species arrives in a new place, it takes over the whole area. What do we think? Yes or no?
I can tell you a story about a raccoon that we had arrive in Banff. It didn't last long.
Alberta famously also keeps rats out, which is really fascinating. On like a global scale, Alberta is internationally known for keeping rats out and away. So we had a really good mix here, but false is the correct answer. So most species do not take over. Most species come and die on the vine. But when they do, they can have really, really big impacts, as we covered a little bit today. So those of you who got that right, way to go. Stellar Panda has our lead. 2 more questions, and then we're going to our Q&A. This is a multi-select. So, it didn't fill in the last bit. Something invasive species, Lori.
I'll tell you all about them. Okay.
What are some of the ones that she mentioned? Quagga and zebra mussels, goldfish, whirling disease, or lake sharks? Some of these are right. At least one of them is wrong. What do we think?
What did we talk about today?
We did not talk about lake sharks because there aren't any.
Definitely no lake sharks.
No, whirling disease are mussels, goldfish. Way to go, everybody. All right. Stellar Panda keeps our lead as we go to our final question. Okay, for all the marbles, the handy phrase for avoiding helping spreading invasive aquatic species, so in the water, is swim, drink, fish, stay away from the park, clean, drain, dry, or only paddle after dark, which sounds very menacing.
I like how you made that rhyme, Jesse. That's great.
Thank you.
See, things are more memorable when there's a little rhyme involved, right?
My pleasure. I'll be here all week. Wow, 154. Yes, clean, drain, dry. If you take away nothing else from the broadcast, that will help you help avoid introducing your own invasive species. I can speak English, I swear. Nicely done, everyone. Let's see our leaderboard. And then our Davis class. We're coming to you, grade 2. So come on in. Our winner of the Kahoot is Stellar Panda. Way to go, everybody. Oh, wow. Glenview, Illinois. Clearly the winners of that in the background. Way to go, Avoca West. To Davis. Hello. Welcome into the broadcast. Hi, guys. Do you have a question for Lori today?
Hands up if you have a question.
Yeah.
How about Maxwell? What's your question?
Hey, Maxwell.
I forgot.
Oh, Taylor?
I forgot.
Georgia.
Should I be looking at the board?
Adriana?
No, you're the computer.
What I think we'll do is we'll come back in a second. You guys can think about a question as a class, and we'll come back. We're going to head to our Stellar Panda winners. Hello, Avoca West. Welcome in. Congrats.
Lucy.
Do you have a
Lucy,
question
come
for
on
Lori?
up. Here, Lucy, come talk over here so they can hear you.
Where do zebra mussels live?
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, so zebra mussels came from Europe, from Northern Europe. They lived in the Black Sea, and they are just fine there. But when they come into our waters in Canada, they've come as far east as, or sorry, as far west as Lake Manitoba. So they're causing all kinds of problems there because it used to be beautiful sandy beaches in Lake Manitoba, and now we've got lots of sharp little mussel shells that people have to wear, water shoes to walk into the lake because it's so sharp underfoot now because of the zebra mussels. So we're really trying to keep them out of here, but originally they came from Europe.
Yep. Lake Erie, in one of the Great Lakes in Canada and the United States, has tons of zebra mussels. I've seen that firsthand and cut my own foot on them. So it's a big challenge, and we're doing a lot to try and fix it. That's a great question, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Miss Almeida in Toronto, welcome back, guys. They want to know, are there laws to prevent the zebra mussels from accidentally being transported from one lake to another? If it were an accident, what could we do?
Yeah, well, we're trying to prevent those kind of accidents by having stations alongside the road that are boat inspection stations. And these stations are not there to punish anybody or give you a ticket. In fact, you'll only get a ticket if you ignore the station and try and go past it with your boat from one place to another. So I know in Alberta, they've become very serious about those inspection stations. And when you arrive with your watercraft, and that can be a canoe, a kayak, even your floaty toys, really anything that's going from one water body to another, their interest is to clean it and make sure that there's not any of those invaders stuck to your boat or on your hip waders or anything that you use in the water. They will help you clean it with a hot spray of water that dislodges most of the stuff and get any gunk off of there. And then they're going to help you dry that. And then they will certify you to go into the next body of water.
Cool. What a great policy. That's fantastic. Thanks, Ms. Almeida's class, for the question. We're going to head back to our Davis crew now. Washburn and Secord, if you guys want to flick on your microphones, I can come to you too, and we'll take some from YouTube. But our Davis class, come on back in. Hey, guys.
Does fires kill pine needles?
Ooh, our beetles, yeah.
Yes, yeah, fire can kill pine beetles. In fact, it's about the only tool that we have control over to manage the spread of mountain pine beetles. So one of the things that we do here in the mountain national parks like Banff, Jasper, Yoho, and Kootenay is we apply fire on purpose to eliminate some parts of the forest to slow the spread of pine beetles. And the only other thing that will really impact the pine beetle population is a really cold snap early in the winter. So we do use fire as a tool, and it does kill mountain pine beetle.
Very cool. We've got a mountain pine beetle question on YouTube. Miss Manalo's class wants to know if mountain pine beetles bite humans. If you're going to help the tree, are the beetles going to come at you or what?
No, I've never been bitten by a mountain pine beetle. They're very small. They're about the size of a grain of rice. And no, they don't bite us. They have sharp little teeth to dig into trees and get under the bark. But yeah, they don't bite humans. Phew.
Well, speaking of animals or things maybe affecting us, Miss Wilson wants to know if a fish has whirling disease and we eat it, will we also get whirling disease?
Great question. And no, thank goodness the answer is no. The thing that causes whirling disease is not something that can affect humans. So when we're talking about diseases, often they don't transfer between species, and whirling disease is that case as well. It only affects really trout and salmon species. So that's mostly what we have around here in Banff National Park are trout types of fish. And that's why we're super concerned about the presence of whirling disease, because when whirling disease affects those young fish, it can kill up to 90% of them. So it's a big deal around here. But it will not hurt people. You can safely eat a fish that is infected with whirling disease.
One of the cool stories about this is someone who's like an evolutionary biologist is the idea that diseases often impact things that are related. So like the same diseases that affect us will affect chimpanzees, gorillas, bonobos, but as you go down to like rats, maybe not. So you tend to have things that affect the same sort of thing in the same family group and usually aren't transferable between really wildly diverse species, which is kind of neat.
Yeah.
We've got Miss DeVellis and Mr. Edwards both asking about when we started seeing these invasives in Canada and in the park. Was there a timeline for this?
Well, it was 2016 that we noticed the whirling disease in Johnson Lake in Banff National Park, and that was the first recorded instance of whirling disease. I'm trying not to get this wrong. I think it was in Canada, but I double check that fact, kids. I think it was in Canada, though, that was our first notice of whirling disease here. Other invasives, you know, this is really become more of an issue as people are really mobile these days. We're bringing our equipment, our water equipment, from one location to another location. We're traveling in the summer. We maybe have hiking boots that we use on a trail in Utah, and then we come up to the Yukon and we hike there. And so it's really easy to transport things like seeds, or those tiny aquatic invasives that we can't see with the naked eye, just on our gear, right? So I don't have too much more information on timeline, but yeah, it's definitely lately become a big hot topic, which is why we're talking about it today.
Exactly. So thank you all for being here and being part of the solution just by listening and sharing what you learned today with your friends and family. We have time for only a few more questions. Time flies and you're having fun on one of these broadcasts. I'm going to stress again, if you want to check this out on YouTube, share with your friends and family, check out the whole Peak Discovery series, and check out some resources we'll send you at the end of the broadcast. Please do. It's a great way to keep the learning going. We're going to take just a couple more questions before we wrap and say a big thank you and farewell. So Miss Secord's room joining us live on StreamYard, they want to know, how do the fish spread the whirling disease? So they're in the water, they get the disease. What's going on from there?
Yeah, so the whirling disease has a really interesting life cycle. It lives in tubifex worms, which is a type of worm that lives in the mud. Look those up; they're super gross and cool, but they live in the mud at the bottom of the water bodies, and so part of the life cycle of this pathogen is in their body, and then the tubifex worms release these things called TAMs. It's got a much longer name for the scientists, but these TAMs get inhaled, absorbed by the fish, go into the fish and then deform their bodies, make their tail black and twisted. And then when that fish dies, it decomposes and releases those spores back out into the ecosystem that are then taken up again by those tubifex worms. So it's a multi-stage, multi-species life cycle that this pathogen has. Super interesting, super complicated. That's about as far as I can go with it right here and right now.
I love it. And tubifex worms are really freaky. You should all look them up. They're amazing. I'm going to put it in the chat for everyone too, so you can check them out. All right, Avoca West, you guys are going to wrap us up with one more question. Come on in and take us away, guys. Hey.
Do like the trees when they die, like spread just like a little bit of seeds to make a couple more grow?
Interesting.
Yeah. So what's really cool is every few years, trees will have what we call a mast year. And that means that they're producing tons and tons of cones. In the case of spruce and pine trees and fir trees, they'll produce just a huge flush of cones. And that makes tons and tons of seeds. And those seeds can be can sprout for many years. If they they're falling to the ground, they might get buried in the organic layer of the dirt and not get eaten by little squirrels and things like that. Those seeds can stay in that dirt, and then as soon as they get enough sunshine and water to sprout, up they come. So that's the amazing thing about trees, is that they're always looking toward the future. They're always spreading those seeds. And in those mast years, they're making tons of seeds that can see them through when the trees ultimately die. Yeah.
Very Cool question. Thanks for that, Lori. We've covered a lot of ground in our Habitat Heroes Q&A. This is amazing, guys. Before we wrap up and bring in our classes to say a big thank you and farewell, and please, YouTube classes, you can join in at home and yell and scream and annoy the principal. Please do. Is there any last message you want to leave us with about invasive species being a habitat hero, Banff National Park, or anything before we say goodbye, Lori?
Well, just if there's one idea that I can leave you with, it's your role in being a habitat hero and protecting native species wherever you are. So get to know your native species, get to know what the threats are to them, and then actively work to prevent those threats. That's the best thing that we can do to keep our native species healthy and whole, is to prevent the incoming of invasive species in the first place.
No better message than that. Kids at home, you guys know you can help make an impact on climate change, on habitat loss, now invasive species too. So go out there, do what you're doing already. You're the best generation ever for knowing the facts and taking positive action. And so I just want to say a huge thank you to Lori, the whole Parks Canada team, and all our 5,200 plus kids around the world today. It's been such a thrill having you all. And Miss Davis's class and Avoca West, you get to be our ambassadors on behalf of all kids to say a big thank you and farewell. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye for now, guys. We are done live, everybody.